Howdy, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast. As always, we are brought to you by Mountain Tough Fitness, Blokes Modern Men's Health, and Trapline Beard Oil. Go check out the show notes and get some awesome discounts. They're great products overall, and a lot of them I use daily. So if you're hearing this, then you're likely a steady listener. And as you know, I've taken a couple weeks break to go do some bear hunting, hang out with the family, and most recently, I married my sister-in-law and my new brother-in-law this past weekend, which was awesome. Up in Idaho City. So it was a lot of fun. But if you are a listener, go to wherever you're listening to this podcast at, leave a 5-star review on whatever platform it is, and help us out. It is a big help for us. But I am excited because today, my guest is somebody who I've been going back and forth with for quite a while, and we've finally been able to align our schedules, which is awesome. But he's hails from the great state of Wyoming, which he might be the first Wyomingite. I don't know what you're supposed to say for that, but that's been on the show. He's a hunting guide, a father, and he was also on the 10th season of the History Channel TV show Alone. Cade Cole, welcome to the show.
How's it going, man? I'm so excited to be on here.
Yeah, man. Well, to get started, Cade, I ask a question for every guest, and I want you to reach back in your memory piggy bank. Can you remember the first time in your life that you were ever exposed to anything related to trapping?
Yeah. So actually I have two really funny, I have two memories very, very early on. And so I guess I should start this out by saying I'm probably in maybe actually like a little bit of a minority in the hunting crowd, considering that I grew up in a family where, it was like, I don't remember the first time I went hunting. I went hunting before, I was like in a backpack, like in a blanket type guy. So, but anyway, hunting is very much hunting and trapping, both very much like a very important part of our lifestyle. And so, my grandparents raised cattle, and we had a bad coyote problem. And I remember, man, I must have been like, it was before kindergarten, I bet. And so my dad was out setting snares for coyotes, and I remember helping him and my grandpa as well. And we were catching them, but man, we were just having a real hard time keeping up. And to put it like in perspective, in Central Texas, there in the 90s, there the wild hog population was growing pretty dramatically, and with that, the coyotes have a lot of food, right? So they could catch all those little piglets, and the coyote population just kind of boomed alongside them. So, anyways, this rolls me into the funny part that, amongst all the snares that we were setting out, we were catching coyotes, but not a ton. They get pretty wise to them fairly quickly. And so started experimenting. I heard my dad started experimenting with poison and trying to poison some of these coyotes. And anyway, even as a kid, I remember that it was like the plague had struck. There was dead buzzards and like dead cats and there was like dead animals everywhere after he set out some sort of poison. And I remember my dad and my grandpa very vividly being like, we got to clean everything up that's left, and we cannot do that again. Because they just they decimated like every animal in the food chain that touched those coyotes. I don't know what they used, but it was super effective.
Yeah. Well, as you know, that was the big use when they took out the wolves in the West in the 1800s, right? Like when it was becoming overpopulation. It's a very effective tool, but it's a little bit more indiscriminate than, snares with breakaways or footholds. But yeah, I can imagine as a kid and kind of overwatching the, your dad and your grandpa kind of having that, oh shit moment and, paring back on it. But sounds like the coyote problem was kind of taken care of, at least for a little while.
Oh yeah, man, it knocked it out. I remember there was a dead calf, and they poisoned it. So we found the calf that had been killed. They poisoned it, and then there was like a dead coyote, and there was like a dead buzzard, and there was like a dead crow. It was just like didn't even make it very far. Wow. It really set with me in my mind.
Wow. So maybe I didn't pick up on this at the beginning. I just kind of assumed you're born and raised in Wyoming, but you said Central Texas. So did you grow up in Central Texas then?
I did. I actually grew up in the Stephenville area, if you know where that is. Yep. So self-proclaimed cowboy capital of the world, right beside Steamboat Springs, and and everybody else you can think of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so when you were there, I mean, obviously, what did your parents do? I mean, it sounds like they were either running or had cattle to some degree, right? So was it just ranching that you grew up around and cowboying, and then like hunting and trapping were on the periphery, or was it, you just lived there and you were a hunting and trapping family?
Yeah, my grandparents raised cattle, and we had quite a bit of longhorns. And then my dad was actually a highway patrolman, and so he didn't want anything to do with the cowboy stuff. It's almost like it skipped a generation in my family, and like every other generation, somebody became a cowboy. And anyway, yeah, so I grew up in that, but because of the cows, we had plenty of land, and Texas is great for a kid learning to hunt. I would almost say better than most states, because even though you don't have necessarily the amount of like wildlife opportunity that you do in like Wyoming or Montana or Idaho or anything like that, as far as like multiple species, I could kill 7 deer, whitetail deer a year, and I could kill an endless amount of hogs. I mean, there's no limit, no bag, there's no season, there's no nothing for pigs. So obviously you're trying to maintain good property for the cows. So just alongside that comes, trying to take care of all the wild hog population. And so, man, that was what I did for fun. I had a rifle and a pistol, and, from maybe even some might speculate a little too early, and then that was what I did. That was my fun, so it kind of got me into the industry really, really early on.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I didn't start hunting until I was an adult. Like I went on my first whitetail hunt. I think I was 29 or 30 in Tennessee. I'm from the Southeast originally, before moving to Idaho, and, moved out to Idaho. Obviously, like you said, from a trapping and hunting perspective, you have a very wide range of animals that you can pursue, right? Big game, fur bearers, the whole lot. You get to all of it. But the seasons and the take are very small. And a lot of them are like, whether Wyoming, Montana, lottery system, right? You're not out hunting all the time. You might be able to trap a lot, but you're not out hunting all the time. And, now going back occasionally to like South Carolina, where my parents still are, I have some buddies who hunt. And like you said, they can take 13 deer, I think, in some instances. And like, there's something to be said about just repetition. It's like anything else. And I think, like you said, for a kid, it's probably better to be in a state like that where you have an abundance of a certain species and not necessarily free reign, but like you can do a lot. You can get a lot of hunting in a year, which is probably not something people talk about a lot as far as, what's better, southeastern hunting versus big game Western hunting. But
yeah, man, honestly, like this is something I've been saying for a long time, is that there's a lot of elitism that comes with Western hunting, especially from guys that have only ever hunted out West, that are born and raised out here. And I've noticed that over the years, especially guiding hunts. I've guided for, every species you can hunt in the lower 48. And so it's funny to me to see the way people kind of like refer to even maybe like Southeastern whitetail hunting, stuff like that, and talking about, like the, people's perception of difficulty level. Like, man, in my personal experience, I've hunted elk in some of the gnarliest country out here, and I've hunted deer in central New York. And like there is not any kind of pressure on wildlife out west that comes anything close to the kind of pressure that you're seeing in whitetail bucks in like New York, Tennessee, Texas. I mean, any of those states. It's like there's a lot of people hunting, and there's a lot of people hunting for a long amount of time, and there's just a ton of human pressure. Those animals get so smart. And whereas out here, it's almost a little bit easier. I mean, there's more country to hunt and all that. It's a very different thing. So I think it's interesting to see people's perspectives on that, and according to where they grew up hunting, and how they ended up Western hunting, and where they fell into it in life. It's a really interesting topic to talk about.
Yeah. And, for me, like some of the hardest hunting I've done, if you're in shape and you canceled that part out of the Western hunting aspect, like, and you look at it just for the hunt, like some of the hardest stuff I've done is sitting in a tree stand for 8 hours in one time. Like there's been times I've tried to crawl down from a tree back east, and it's like I can't stand up straight for an hour. You're sitting there still for 8 hours and may or may not have something, and it's that's difficult too. It's just difficult in a different way.
Yeah, totally miserable. Yeah, or you sit there for 8 hours and then you like try to move your head and you're like, I just busted I'm just busted now. So my hunt's over. Like I wasted my entire day.
Yeah. But back to like your trajectory, as a kid. So you grow up, you're watching some coyotes getting snared by your dad and your grandpa. Like, from a trapping perspective, did anything else bubble up for you? Did you get to start playing with footholds as a kid? Like, obviously you had your rifle, your pistol, you're getting to go around and take a lot of different critters. Like, did the trapping bug ever, like, well, pun intended, trap you as a kid?
Yeah, when I was, I enjoyed, and I didn't do it much, but I very much enjoyed trapping coons because raccoons, man, we had a ton of them, and they're kind of just a pest. But we just had those old simple, little hand traps where they get their hand in there and get
put
caught.
A marshmallow on top and.
Yep. And so anyway, like those were great. And I skinned a whole lot of coons for doing that and everything. But yeah, and I really enjoyed it. And then as I got to be into my teens and I started playing sports and stuff like that, I just didn't dedicate the time to trapping that I would when I didn't have all the extracurricular stuff. And so I kind of just fell back into hunting. And then I didn't really do any more trapping at all until I moved out to Wyoming, until I kind of moved west and established myself out here. And then I kind of, got back into it.
That seems to be a pretty common theme. Like I've had guys on here, trappers who are former MLB stars. I've had folks who, oftentimes it's that situation where, especially like in the 80s and 90s, well, really the late 80s or mid 80s, where there was a bit of the fur boom, right? And, somebody our age would remember Grandpa or Uncle Joe trapping and brought him along as a kid. And then there's a period in their life, usually like middle school till post college, if they went, where they didn't have the time to do it and then found it later in life. And it sounds like you're on the same path. But, when you were in Texas, then you were hunting as a kid, like what got you on the track to guiding and getting out to Montana? Like what was the transition period of like, I lived in Texas for a while, and I love Texas, and a lot of people never leave. So what was it that kind of pulled you away and ended up plopping you in Wyoming, not Montana?
Yeah, so it was a really funny story. So, man, I was just kind of a punk kid in some ways. And, my dad, for all his faults and flaws, he had issues and stuff. And, it was just, there's all that teen angst and everything. And so when I was a teenager, we just butted heads so bad. And I ended up moving out early. And, man, I struggled in school because I didn't want to sit still. And I didn't, I wasn't conducive to the like classroom environment like a lot of kids are, like a lot of boys are. And so anyways, I moved out early. I didn't have a whole lot going on. And I needed to make money. I was living out of my truck for a little bit for, a while. And so I kind of figured out there's a lot of people I knew that I could stay with and stuff. And, it's all cattle country. And so everybody's worried about crops, and it's big peanut country out there. They grow a lot of peanuts and stuff, and peanuts and hay and corn. So the hogs, they get in, they tear up a whole bunch of these fields, and people just wanted them gone. That's way before all the helicopter hunts and the thermal, and it was like a big thing. So I could get dogs from the pound in town for free. Mm-hmm. We could get dogs for free from the pound. And, you get all those bulldogs that bit somebody or whatever, and they were going to get put down. So it's like, they just kind of cannon fodder. You go out, try to start catching hogs, catch them off the field. Here's my little entrepreneur teenage brain is like, man, I could make money doing this because people want to do stuff like this. And so, I started charging money and taking people out pig hunting and doing that kind of stuff. And so you kind of build those relationships and make more friends that are like-minded. And so I kind of really got immersed in the hunting as a kid. I was still, like a freshman in high school. So maybe I was a sophomore in high school. And so, one thing led to another. And then the next thing I was debating on whether or not I should just try to like drop out of school or whatever. And I didn't, because I played football. My coaches were really good about kind of keeping me reined in. But I was making enough money to support myself guiding hog hunts, some of it with a gun, some of it with, the dogs. And anyway, the more I did it, the harder I wanted to do it, and the more fences I encountered and the more property boundaries. And the next thing you know, a 3,000 acre ranch seemed pretty small, and then a 5,000 acre ranch seemed pretty small, and then I was hunting some of these like 30,000 acre high fence ranches. And
well, hold on, I got to poke in here for a little bit because I'm just curious now. I think I have an entrepreneurial mindset too, and similar in high school, I was doing all sorts of goofy stuff to make money, and some of it worked out. I'm curious, as a sophomore in high school, you're a football player, you're living on your own or on friends' couches or whatever it is, you got your enough money to support yourself. How are you approaching these ranch owners to, like, was it like previous relationships, or were you just starting to make a little bit of a name for yourself and, just being brave, picking up the phone and calling, Joe Buckley at the big ranch, the high fence ranch, and say, hey, you got a pig problem, I can help you? Like, how did that happen?
Well, so for the most part, the way it worked out was I had a job at a dairy. Mm-hmm. And so obviously I'm working on the dairy. We're looking at the fields getting torn up by hogs. And, you get along with, your boss well enough. You're like, hey, man, do you care if I go out there and kill some of them things? And he's like, no, not at all, please. So you kill them. And then the neighbor guy is like, man, I got a hog problem. And that guy's like, oh, hey, I got this kid that works for me. He's kind of a dumb kid, but he's out killing these things and he loves it. So, the next thing you know, everybody kind of word of mouth gets around that like, hey, there's this whole group of punk ass high school kids that just love killing hogs, and they'll butcher them for you too. Like a lot of those dairies, it became really incentivized because you've got all these workers, half of them are Mexican guys, don't speak any English, and they're stoked to take a whole or a half a hog home after work, just to be able to barbecue it or whatever. And so, it's like, it was a good deal. Like, I'm killing it for me. And then you're figuring out how to take other people out, and oftentimes you just don't really tell the ranch owner that you're taking other people out for money, cause you're a punk kid. You're just trying to like make a quick buck.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, it was like one thing led to another, and then certain people knew about me, and then it was like I had friends that were doing it. So it's definitely a community of people that were doing these hunts. Like, it wasn't just like an individual deal. There was tons of us doing it.
I can imagine that this was a good prefix for obviously like guiding Western hunters, like bigger dollar hunts. Do you remember any specific instance from like these early hog hunting guiding days? I'll use air quotes for, like, again, punk high school kid making money. But does anything stand out to you, like maybe like your first asshole, quote unquote, client that you had to deal with, like learning those skills of dealing with people who have an expectation, which is to take an animal, when, as as a guide, like reality is often sometimes different than what the output is. Like, did you have to learn anything really early that's probably held over in the rest of your guiding career?
I did, man. Two instances I very much remember. I had this one guy who was pretty heavy, and he was not physically capable of going on the hunt. And so anyway, he struggled real hard, and he kind of threw a fit. And anyway, and I gave him his money back. And I probably shouldn't have, but I did. I gave him his money back, and it wasn't much. It was like $75 or something, but it was just like, and I remember thinking like, man, that guy wasn't even like, he wasn't capable. Like, I should have just not taken him out when he showed up. I should have just told him like, hey man, you're too fat. Yep. But, and I didn't. And so it kind of like, it put that in my head. I was like, oh man, like this isn't really a legit business. Like, if I had somebody get hurt, or if this guy was like a total, like, I don't know exactly what the legal repercussions would be. And so that was definitely like an eye-opener for me. And then the other big eye-opener, probably the biggest eye-opener that I had, was I took this other guy out, and this was like towards the end of my high school career when I was doing it. And he was just like kind of a really like soft type person, really nice, just soft spoken, everything. And he was really just like timid, and he seemed pretty scared almost. And anyway, we didn't get anything, and he tipped me really big. He gave me a really big tip, and I tried to be super like uh, super nice to him and kind of like help him out with everything. And anyway, uh, yeah, it just like that stuck in my mind too. That I was like, this is way more customer service than it is a product, and that really stuck with me. And I'm glad that I learned that lesson early on, because I do see a lot of hunting guides. Some guys never figure that out. That it's so much more customer service than it is anything else.
And as you're learning those lessons, so you're coming up to the end of your high school career, you're wrapping up football. Like, did you have any mentors around you helping you kind of come to these conclusions of like the customer service? Like, hey, Cade, like you could probably take this further, or was it kind of insular and like you were kind of only figure it out on your own?
No, I mean, like, honestly, back in those days, it wasn't professional enough. There wasn't enough people that were really, it's not like it is now where there's like, hog hunting outfits and people got like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it wasn't the same. It was like a bunch of rednecks that really loved going out and running their dogs, and crackheads that wanted to stay out all night.
Yeah.
Like that was it. And so, yeah, I don't know. I actually, I dated this girl, and it's really dumb, but anyway, I dated this girl, and she was kind of uppity, and she was like kind of trying to convince me that, what I was doing was like, was lame, and I was never gonna have like a real grown up life doing it and all that, and like, I just like,
on her.
Yeah, I started buying into it too. My high school teachers were like, "Oh, if you don't get your grades up, you're gonna live in a wall tent," And like, look at me now,
I am living in a wall tent.
I do live in a wall tent.
Making money at it. But so what happens after high school then? So you graduate. What's bridge the gap for me between then and when you head out to Wyoming?
So I had like this dog that I really loved, and she died. And I kind of just I packed all my stuff up. Most of my buddies were out working in the oil field at the time, West Texas. And so I had that girl in my ear, and I was like, I'm gonna get my stuff together and be a grown up, and I'm gonna move out to West Texas, and I'll go to work in the oil field. And I did that, and it sucked. I was working super long days, and I never got to do anything for myself really. And it's just like a testosterone filled, awful environment. And I didn't have any freedom, and I felt so trapped, even though I was living out in the desert in the middle of nowhere. And so, anyway, long story short, I ended up getting laid off in the oil field, and kind of spent some time, popping back and forth between Mexico and the U.S., just like enjoying myself, kind of exploring and stuff. And anyway, I wanted to like have wanted to see more, do more. I lived at the beach for like 3 months. I was homeless and like lived on the beach. That was awesome. Nobody knows you're homeless when you live on the beach, because you just look like you're fishing.
Yeah, 100%.
Pretty cool.
I spent a lot of time in Central America bouncing around, and like when you couldn't afford a hostel, you just sleep out on the beach, and you go and you surf, and it's easy to find food. It's cheap. It's great.
Yeah, you sleep on the sidewalk, like in the inner city, and people are like, that homeless bum. But you sleep on the beach somewhere, and people are like, that guy's having a good time.
Yeah.
So
you do that, and you wrap up, and why Wyoming? I keep wanting to say Montana. Why Wyoming?
Yeah. So it's funny. I wanted to go to Montana. I just can't read a map. No. Yeah. So what happened was I loaded all my stuff up in my truck. I had like $300 in cash. Filled my truck up with red diesel from my buddy that was a contractor. And I started driving north, and I was like, I'll just find a job on a cattle ranch or something, because I'm pretty handy, And anyway, I drove up, got to Laramie, Wyoming. I kind of explored a little, and I got all the way up here to northwestern Wyoming, Du Bois specifically, about 80 something miles east of Jackson Hole.
Yep.
And I was looking at the mountains, and man, I love it here. It's so beautiful. And I stopped to get more diesel, and I had I think I had like $120 left. And stopped to get more diesel, and I'm like, well, that'll get me plenty, that'll get me up into southern Montana. I'll be good. And the guy beside me at the diesel pump started giving me like, kind of like jibbing me about being from Texas, right? Because everybody loves to hate Texas. The only thing that that other states, like, you know, Texas loves Texas, like other states love to hate Texas.
Yep.
Anyway, so he's giving me a hard time about my Texas license plates, and he's like, "Where are you headed?" And I was like, "I don't know, man." And he's like, you don't know where you're going?" And I was like, "Well, I'm kind of headed up to Montana." And he said, what are you doing? What are you going to do in Montana?" And I was like, "Well, I'm going to see if I can find a job on a cattle ranch." And so that kind of opened up the whole conversation about like, well, you just got in your truck and started driving north like 1,500 miles, like on a hope. And so I was like, "Yeah, man, I just really want to work in the mountains." And, you know, I kind of whatever. And he asked me, he's like, "You know anything about hunting?"
Huh.
And it was like, I was like, you know, I'm sitting there pumping diesel. And I'm like, boy, do I, you know? And so anyway, he's like, "You know, I'm an outfitter. I run an elk camp up here. You know, if you'd want to come out and like camp jack or be a wrangler or whatever, I could always use help for a month or two to get you some gas money. You can keep on going."
What time of year was this?
September.
Perfect.
It was like August 28th, I think.
So they probably had all their camps just set up.
They hadn't set up yet. They were about to set up that week because they were going to start non-resident archery hunts like September 15th. Yep. And so anyway, he was like, "Oh, I could always use help. Like, we still got to set up camp." And so anyway, I thought like, well, it'd get me fuel money and it'd be cool to work in an elk camp for a little bit. That's something to be, you know, cool. And so, yeah, I rode in with them like 2 days later.
Like, so what? I mean, I'm curious now. Where'd you stay that night? Was it just like, "Here's my number, call me," and you thought, this is never going to happen? And like, clearly you didn't keep driving north. So like, it had to have been convincing enough that you stuck around to go.
He seemed like a nice guy, and he had a bunkhouse cabin and everything. So I mean, it was like, it worked out for me. I'm like, "Oh man, you know, maybe I'll spend you know, a couple of bucks on something to eat, and I got, you know, some work to do, and I'll make some money." And you know, it just kind of gave me a chance to breathe and relax for a minute, because I knew being in a backcountry hunting camp like that, I'd be able to make money without spending it.
Yep.
So I was very aware of my budgeting already at that point in life. So yeah, it was a big thing for me to be able to, you know, okay, I can recharge and then go. And so
so you drive out with these guys, and you still don't know if you're going to get murdered or if it's a legit thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really worried about that, you know. I already kind of been through plenty of weirdos with the hog hunting stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah. So what was the experience like then? So you get out there, this is your first time in an elk camp. So like, are you helping set up the wall tents? And then are you like camp jack? Like what's your role there this first season?
Yeah. I mean, I was just splitting firewood and, you know, kind of like just being, you know, a little like camp bitch and trying to, you know, you try to like prove your worth and stuff. And, yeah, I mean, it was fun taking care of horses, making sure horses got to eat, set up all the tents looking nice. But I've always had a real like fine attention to detail. I like things to look nice. I'm very, you know, organized. And so I think I just kind of conducive to that environment where things aren't, you know, I mean, I've got it in a lot of backcountry camps, and not all of them are great. You know, I mean, and for me, the biggest thing that you can have is like a sharp looking camp with nice tight tents and good rain flies and straight stovepipes and all that stuff. And so it's just very valuable for the outfitter, and it was valuable for me because it gave me a chance to show my worth and all that. And then obviously I really enjoyed hunting. So, you know, things just kind of rolled organically from that point, and we kind of, you know, jived real well.
Did you get to go or like out with any of the guides that first trip, or were you kind of stuck campside?
I did. So most of the archery season, I was campside, and then as the rifle season came around, you know, I kind of got the opportunity to go out, and that was kind of an interesting thing to me, because there was like that kind of like a little bit almost that elitism, like I was talking about, of like, well, you don't know anything, you're just some, you know, kid from Texas. And so honestly, I mean, deer are deer, and in my opinion, whitetail deer are much more intuitive than elk are. I mean, I don't know. In my experience, elk aren't that hard to hunt. Yep. But anyway, so I went out, and then we had some success, and I got to help out guide a little bit, and then so they gave me the opportunity to come back and guide the next season. So I kind of, you know, made a good year out of it and enjoyed the mountains and built fence and kind of like tried to plant a little bit of roots. And I popped back to Texas for a little bit. And then that next season, I kind of started my Western like elk hunting guiding career.
That's awesome. And then that first season, like thinking back to your hog hunting, like, we talked before about lessons that you probably took from hog hunting to just guiding in general, but were you surprised with how similar or different the two were?
Not really. So like to put this for you in it's almost like a funny deal. I killed 6 bull elk my first week of guiding elk hunts.
Nice.
So I was like, I don't know, like and a lot of that was luck. So it was like, I don't know, to me, it was almost like it came off easier. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that was luck, honestly. But I learned a lot of lessons in that. And then I was able to, I think the success early on for me was really important. Like having my head held high, that my mistakes weren't so painful. And then it kind of really like got my momentum going. And I started kind of like saying, okay, like I guess what I'm saying is that I learned really quickly that your success is very anecdotal and your failure is very important for your growth and like your strategy and all those, all like your whole tactical scheme of hunting. And so having that confidence to know that, okay, all right, I just need to find my weak points and my shortcomings and kind of like focus on that. It just really made me a lot more successful as a guide, which is something that you can really only do with like deer type species, because the pigs are they're just everywhere, man. There's just like 300 of them, and you bump into them and it's just a bloodbath. You try to kill as many as you can. You don't really learn a lot from it. And the dogs are like actively hunting for you,
And I think probably too, to your point earlier, I've been on some guided elk hunts before, and you're right. Like it is a customer service thing. It's wild to think about, right? Because you could have, I'm sure you've guided some guys who are buttoned up. They're great hunters, and like it makes your job that much easier. And then you have maybe the person, the flatlander who's overweight, like the guy you ended up refunding in the pig hunt, like that, he's supposed to get up on a horse, or like, now we have to change our entire approach to this hunt. And obviously you have people who are coming in who might not have shot their bow in a while, or maybe they didn't dope their rifle the right way, or, they haven't been shooting the way that they said they have been. But like, those are elements that are largely out of your control. So as a guide who's focused on tips and making it an experience, I think a lot of guys do miss that of like, overcoaching people on what's going on around them, like what you are looking for as a guide, assuming they want to know that type of stuff, and like making it an experience regardless of the outcome, because the outcomes in Western hunting are largely out of your control in some instances.
Absolutely, man. I think that that's the biggest difference between like a mediocre guide and a great guide is your ability to evaluate your clients really quickly. Mm-hmm. If you can evaluate your clients really quickly, and the physical fitness thing is crazy too, because you'll get guys that are really physically fit, but maybe they're not very mentally strong.
Yeah.
And that lack of mental toughness is a bigger obstacle than physical fitness, because I can take a guy that isn't as physically fit as he should be, and I can encourage him and I can push him outside of his comfort zone. And a lot of times people that aren't necessarily very physically fit are capable of pushing themselves mentally if they have that capacity to go and do way more than they would even think they could, or that you would think they could. But the opposite is true. You take a guy that's very physically fit and he doesn't have the mental capacity to really push himself out of his comfort zone, you can burn a guy out like that really, really quickly. And so I think that's a huge detriment to a lot of guides. Your hunting ability, like I wish more guides understood that your hunting ability as a guide means nothing. Like it's all about your customer service. And it's all about your adaptability. So like, it's easy to go back into camp and be like, well, I could have killed an elk today, but I got this guy. Well, yeah. So what? You're not hunting for you. You're hunting for him. And this guy is paying you for a service. And that's something that the quicker you figure it out, the more success you'll have. And then the more success you have, the better you look, the better clients you get. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy once you figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I think, I don't know if the rumor mill is true on whether you're going to have a book coming out in the future, kind of helping some of the, guides navigate some of those waters, after having such a long career as a guide yourself, sharing some of those wisdom and pieces like that. So if that is true, that'll be pretty cool if and when it does come out.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm trying to get it finished up before this season. Come August, I've got mountain goats and sheep hunt stuff going on, but I'm like really trying to wrap this book up. But that's, basically what it encompasses is like a good solid guideline of how to be a professional guide, how to evaluate clients, everything from, I've got a lot of like ballistic information and animal anatomy and habitat. I've got a plant identification section. I mean, it's pretty extensive. I think it's going to be helpful. I don't know. If nothing else, you could tear the pages out and light them on fire, and maybe they'd save your life that way. It'd be a good fire starter. You'd have
there we go.
Yeah. So it's usable.
People will find use out of it one way or the other.
One way or the other, like toilet paper substitute, something.
Yeah, well, just make sure you do the 2-ply pages then. I do want to know, so like you started to build your roots. You had that really good first real season. Like you had your first season when you met the guy at the gas station. Next season, you're actually guiding. You kill several bulls. You start to build a reputation. When did you start to kind of you mentioned you did get back into trapping to some degree. I mean, obviously, when you're out west, like you see the lot of critters you have available to you in hunting seasons. And like for what happened to me was like, I wanted to be a better big game hunter. So I moved out west, was fully in pursuit of, elk, pronghorn, all that stuff. And then trapping kind of came up from an old timer to me, just looking at me being like, hey, why are you doing all those push-ups when you could be out trapping right now? And I'm like, good point. Didn't know that was an option and started down that path. So how did you kind of get reintroduced to trapping when you were in Wyoming?
So the catalyst that kind of got me moving there was in 2016, they were talking really hard about bringing back the wolf hunts in Wyoming and delisting. And it was a huge deal. And they delisted previously, I think in 2015 for like a couple of days before it got shut down. And so anyways, at that point, I'd been out west for, I'd been in Wyoming for a couple of years and I'd been guiding hunts and stuff, but I just didn't really trap because I was always out snowshoeing and stuff and just enjoying the mountains, but I didn't really, with the price of furs being pretty low, it wasn't something that I was super heavy into just because of the, I felt like I wasn't doing the animal justice.
Yep. So
what got me all kind of changed there in perspective was they delisted wolves, and I was able to. So actually the day they delisted, I missed one with a rifle. I hiked in and everything, and I missed. I had bad dope, and anyway, it wasn't even bad dope. I had good dope, but my rangefinder, I think because of all the snow drifts, I think my rangefinder was like skipping over the snow drifts. I don't know what was going on after the mirage or what, but I could not get a solid range. And after I ranged back to like my shooting position from where I was, my rangefinder was like 150 yards off.
You just Kentucky windaged it and stuck your thumb in the air. And let it go.
Exactly. So it just didn't work out. But anyway, and I ended up killing one a couple days later. And so after I killed it, I really wanted to kill another one, right? like killing your first wolf, it's like seeing your first set of boobs. Yep. You're like, man, I want to do that again and again and again, right? And anyway, so they divided it up where, the certain areas were predator zone, like most of the state was predator zone, where they're considered on the same level as like coyotes and foxes, anything like that. And on the other side, they become a trophy big game animal. So they're in the same category as like bears and mountain lions. And I live right on the border. So like some country is predator zone, and then the further you go west, you get into the trophy game management zone. So it opened up trapping for wolves, which I found out is really hard.
That is the
It's
story of my life.
yeah, they're so hard to try, and I've honestly I've never been successful. I've killed a couple of them with a rifle, and I've but anyway, but it got me into it, and it got me trying real hard, and I had a lot of fun doing it.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, because like I could list my mistakes in wolf trapping, a mile wide for very low yield. But again, still, when you trap a wolf, it's pretty the coolest things in the world. But like for you, like was it? I don't know what was legal in Wyoming in that time. Was it footholds and snares, or was it just one or the other?
I think it was both. I can't remember. I know. I know I was using footholds. I don't know if you could use snares or not, but I was using footholds.
Yeah. With that though, like, do you remember? Like, so I have talking about smart. Do you have a particular memory of like what was an instance where you'd had set out traps, and then you had the realization that they are way smarter than they you might have previously thought, or just going up the canine chain, like from a coyotes are smart too. They get trap shy, like you mentioned earlier. But wolves, man, like I've had them go up, pull the pan cover off my thing, and piss on my trap. And pretty sure if I had a game cam out, they would have given it the middle finger and kept walking. But like just stuff like that just is shocking to see how smart they are.
Yeah, we had a buddy of mine. Me and a buddy had he had one of his horses died on winter pasture, and we quartered it up, and it was a quarter horse. But anyway, we quartered it up and hung it from a tree, like a ham from a tree, and there's like a root base that kind of comes out. And there's like a little perfect spot where, and it was just high enough that a dog would have to get up against the tree to bite it. And it's kind of like rubber gloving it, put the pine cones and everything down, and got the trap like perfectly in that nice spot where it could get 1 foot down and then get up on the deal. And you could see in the fresh snow where that wolf came up. And same deal. It nosed the pan. You could see like a little wipe where it just like barely wiped it with its nose, sniffed the trap, turned around like 2 or 3 times, and then left. I'm like, man, he would rather leave that giant piece of meat than he would step on that trap. And it's like, it's boiled, everything. I thought like it's a slam dunk, right? Like it's everything you need to do. And it even had a little bit of snow on it, but they're so smart that he was like, man, this is too conveniently placed for me to step on that.
Yep. And that is the truth, like blind trail sets. Like there's been so many instances where I thought I'd have a layup and somehow they surprise you. And it's amazing to see it. And it gives you a lot of respect for wolves too, or at least it has for me. And like, they are way smarter than me is really what it boils down to. Like I am dumber than a canine in most instances. And I'm pretty sure the ones I have caught are the dumb ones, but I'll take it because, at least they're on my level.
Yeah. And you're saving so many elk. I think that's the thing that just like, it just breaks my heart about the way people talk about wolves and think about them. And I think about all the experiences that I've had chasing them with a rifle and stuff. And it's just, man, trying to kill one with every piece of technology that you can legally use is extremely hard.
Yep.
And they're just making babies and killing elk and making babies and killing elk. And we are not even close to like keeping them managed in any way.
Well, that's the wild part about like where I am in Idaho. Like in the 6 years that I've been in the spot that I'm at, like we have 5 or 6 packs running around in every elk season. Like you just see it over, like the numbers go down. You can see it. And like we have an 80-mile Forest Service road we have to drive from my front door to get to town. Like there's no grocery store, no gas station. And in the winter, especially, like you got your chains on, and inevitably you are going to run up on at least 3 elk that have been wolf killed. 3 in a little 80-mile stretch. And that's just one strip of road. And that's 3 elk, maybe a mule deer, and they're not fully eaten. They're just picked over a little bit, and then they're on to the next thing. And it's wild to see, and that's one of the things I wish people could see to understand, like the devastation in these wild areas. That's just there's no one else. For us, we get over-the-counter tags. You can get them at the grocery store. That's great. Thankfully, when people come in for their hunting season, whether out of state or not, most people buy it, put it in their pocket, and of course, you get like one or two picked off when people are out elk hunting, and then they get lucky, right? There's some pack around, they're within range, you shoot one, fantastic. But the only ones doing any real damage are the trappers, and there's so few trappers for the numbers. Like, the math doesn't math.
Yeah, there's just not nearly enough, man. And it's tough because like you can be a awesome trapper and still not put a dent in the population. You could have 10 awesome trappers, still not put a dent in the population because they're super efficient and it's cool. I think that's the thing that sucks is so many people that are pro wolf think that like guys like me and you are just anti wolf. It's like, man, I'm actually, I appreciate them more. I appreciate them more than your bleeding heart does because I know what they're capable of. But because I know what they're capable of, I want them to be managed.
Yep. And I think that's the right word. It's managed. I don't think anybody here wants to do like we did the 1800s and, poison and take them off the map. I don't want them off the map. They're cool. But, within reason. And I think that's the problem. And that's the fine line. And I don't know if anybody ever gets it right between, staunch trappers and staunch, hunters to staunch activists, right? Like it's nearly impossible to have that right line. Like unless we had the right number of trappers and everything to be able to carry that fine line, it's nearly impossible. So you're never going to make everybody happy is what it boils down to.
No, I mean, it's like anything else that's been politicized in this country. There's like really hard this way or really hard that way. And a bunch of people in the middle. Most people are in the middle, but they don't know because they got to cling to a side.
Yeah. Well, Cade, it's hard to believe it, but we're actually already coming up on an hour. I still haven't talked about your time on Alone, which I think most people would know you from, which is pretty awesome. And probably one of the only podcasts you might have done where we don't talk about Alone. There's a lot going on in your world. And like, we might have to do a part 2. It might take us another 6 months to get it on the books, but we'll have to do a part 2 at some point if you're up for it. And then for you, like, what do you see as the future of trapping? A is one last question I want to ask. And then, B, where can people kind of find out more about you and what you're doing, the content you're producing, obviously, to keep up whenever your book comes out, hopefully later in the year?
Yeah, I mean, to answer your first question, man, like I think that we're seeing a renaissance in sportsmanship as far as like sportsmanship advocation, especially with maybe this Hearing Protection Act going to go through, and like the way we're seeing some of the repeal in the NFA, and I do think that a lot of states seem to be coming around pretty well. Hopefully, getting our new U.S. Fish and Wildlife director and everything, and maybe we can get grizzlies delisted, and maybe we can expand wolf trapping. I really do see with this new Trump administration coming in, that I think that trapping itself could potentially see, being opened up a little more, because I right now it's so politicized, but I think across the board, even people that maybe are more left leaning are starting to see some appreciation for trapping, especially in states like Idaho and Montana, where the wolves are just doing such a big number on the elk that, I feel like it's pretty cut and dry. There's a lot less elk. There's a lot more wolves. You do the math. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully we can get some of these jackass judges out of the way and keep them from blocking stuff. Yeah. But I think that trapping could potentially do really well and see a lot more freedom moving forward. Or on the alternative, if we don't get anything done, it's going to get way harder fairly soon, in another 4 years. So,
well, we'll go with your optimistic outlook for that one. We'll go glass half full, because usually we get a lot more pessimistic views in the future. So I like the optimistic one. So we're going to stick with that one, Cade. And then what about, just what's on your plate right now? What do you have coming up? Anything people should be aware of? Where can they follow you and learn more about you? Because one thing I'll plug this is, you do have, at least on social media, like the no bullshit kind of approach. Like, you don't need the bells and whistles to succeed, right? And that might be part of what your book's about too. But like, you don't have to be the flat hat bro to be successful. You don't have to do the 100-mile races to be successful. You don't have to have the newest tech and
Right.
all this money to be successful. And that's something that I've been drawn to, like just kind of following your journey too.
Yeah, I really appreciate it because, I not to just ramble on too long here, but before I was on alone, I just didn't really understand the power of social media. I didn't understand the power. Every once in a while I posted a picture or whatever, and I never really put a whole lot of like stock in a media presence or anything like that. But as I kind of got exposed a little more into the social media hunting scene, the more I was like, man, these guys are selling people garbage, because when I first started guiding elk hunts, I was doing it in a pearl snap shirt and chinks, and I killed like I don't know 40 something elk, without ever wearing any camouflage. I'm like, this is outrageous. These people are spending money, and there's this whole and it's an industry, it's designed to make money. I get it, but I just kind of wanted to stick up for the kids that were like me. They didn't have a dime, that just liked to hunt. It's like, hey man, you don't have to be peer pressured into having $200 Chinese made pants. You don't have to be peer pressured into this or that, or having a $10,000 rifle set up. Go grab that cheap Winchester 30-30 and go hunt and have fun. And that's all that matters, right? Is that we're having fun. And so I've been super, super fortunate to actually amass a little bit of a following. Instagram doesn't really like me so much, but on Facebook, I've got 17,000 followers or something like that. So it's growing all the time. But yeah, anybody can find me. I'm Cade Cole on Facebook, or Colin Cade Cole on Instagram. And then I've got my YouTube. I put out one unique hunt film a year. I'm trying to get some help filming this hunt this year. So I've got some cool stuff coming for a really neat vintage style hunt. And it'd be really cool. And then I'll have my book coming out. I don't know. I don't want to give a day because I'll probably jinx myself. But
don't worry. I'm going to help you get that book out. I'm going to be your hammer, if you will, to make you get it all over the finish line.
Please do, man. Please do. I need it.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, Cade, again, thank you for the time, and for everybody listening. We'll catch you on another episode of the Okayest Trapper podcast.
All right. Thanks, man.